Hey everybody, it's Karyn Bryant for MMA Heat, and I've got a fan feedback clip for you. We used to do this a while ago, and we kind of got away from it. We wanted to bring it back around. Basically, what happens is, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, going to basically position 3 questions, and we want to hear from you in the comment section, and I'll be jumping in and talking with you, and we just basically like to get a conversation going about 3 topics. Today, I'm going to talk about Benson Henderson, Conor McGregor, and the Gegard Mousasi Michael Bisping fight. But first off, I want to start with Benson Henderson. And my question to you is, do you think the UFC should re-sign Benson? That is the question. Of course, we know his win over Jorge Masvidal the other day at UFC Seoul was the last one on his UFC contract. And even though he said, you know, I want to retire in the UFC, he also is testing the free agent market right now. So according to MMA Junkie, I saw something today that said he got an offer from an organization, but you know, he hasn't said anything about it and hasn't commented on it. I'm curious if you guys think Benson is valuable enough that the UFC should keep him. You know, he was obviously the lightweight champion. He won at UFC 144. He beat Frankie Edgar. He beat him in a split decision to defend his title. He defended his title successfully 3 times before he lost it to Anthony Pettis, which has got to just burn him because that's who he lost the WEC title to with the Showtime kick. So, I mean, Pettis has just got his number, I suppose, so that's got to be frustrating. And maybe he'd love another shot at him. I don't know. But in terms of finishes in the UFC, he had 2 finishes, 4 split decision wins, and 5 unanimous decision wins. He used to get a lot more submissions before he was in the UFC. A lot of rear naked chokes and guillotines, that kind of thing, but slowed down certainly. You know, maybe you could say it's because of the level of competition in the UFC. But he's only 32 years old. In fighting years, though, that might be considered closer to the end than to the beginning. So once again, my question to you is, do you think the UFC should re-sign Benson? So let us know your thoughts on that. Moving on to question number 2. I should have brought a glass of water here. I'm thirsty. Question number 2. Has Conor had a positive or negative effect on the UFC? Now, I ask you this because certainly we know some people think it's a negative effect because they think that he doesn't have enough respect for the way that he had taken Jose's belt that time at the press conference. Some people think that he's too much of a loudmouth. Some people just think that he is taking away from the important things in the sport. But I will position this to you. His coach, John Kavanagh, recently wrote an article. I guess he's been writing for an Irish paper. And he talked about how they came over to America here to finish their camp. They're in LA. In fact, we're going to lunch with them tomorrow. So look at MMA Heat. We'll have some footage with Conor. But he was talking about his training, and I'm going to read you the quote. He said, this is his coach, John. Whenever I'm on social media, flicking through Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, I see a lot of UFC fighters posting videos of what they're up to in training. Now, they're obviously all going to say they're not doing it, but they're putting up their capoeira kicks, spinning kicks, their movement drills on the ground. Let's be honest, was any of that stuff happening before Conor started doing it? No, it wasn't. And he goes on to say, I do genuinely believe that Conor has changed the general approach to training. So with that statement in mind, and granted, you could say John is biased, it's his coach, but I think he does have a point there. So I want to know if you think, you know, the positive effect of maybe how people train differently now versus the negative effect if you believe that Conor's, you know, mouth is a negative effect. Just curious what you think. Has Conor had a positive or negative effect on the UFC? And finally, okay, so, you know, sometimes we here at MMA Heat, we get privileged information between what we hear at Fox and what we hear on the streets and in the gyms. You know, we're in the trenches. And so we get fight announcements. We're like, oh my God, that's so good. Yeah, and then we can't say anything about it. So it probably comes to no surprise if you watch anything with MMA Heat that we would have known that Michael Bisping and Gegard Mousasi were going to be fighting in February in London. So we've known and couldn't say anything about it. And now the word is out and we want to know your opinion on this. Now, Michael Bisping is currently ranked, I believe, number 7 in the UFC's middleweight division, and Gegard is number 9. Michael Bisping's record is 27-7. Gegard's is 37-6. So let's go over. Michael's last 5 wins were Talis Leitchis, CB Dalloway, Kung Lee, Alan Belcher, and Brian Stan. His losses were to Luke Rockhold, Tim Kennedy, Vitor Belfort, and Chael Sonnen. I actually think he beat Chael, but we're going to move on. Gegard's last wins, Costas Philippou, Dan Henderson, Mark Munoz, Ilir Latifi, and Mike Kyle. Of course, we know his loss to Uriah Hall with the incredible kick the other day. He also lost to Gegard and Lyoto Machida. So I'm curious, those are their sort of most recent wins and losses. Who do you think walks away from that fight victorious? Who wins, Bisping or Mousasi? Now, this is one of those that you can argue a lot, and I actually spoke to Michael about this, and he knows it's a tough fight, and Gegard knows that Michael's output is very high. So it's going to be a good one. I believe this one is going to be on Fight Pass, and like I said, it's February 27th in London, so Michael will have the home field advantage, but you know, Gegard being from Holland, not too far of a ride for him and his fans. So there you have it, our 3 fan feedback questions. Do you think the UFC should re-sign Benson? Has Conor had a positive or negative effect on the UFC? And who wins, Bisping or Mousasi? So get on here, give us your thoughts, give us your comments, and we want to know what you think. And as I mentioned, I'm going to lunch with Conor tomorrow, so look for some clips on our MMA H.E.A.T channel or on the Karyn Bryant channel here. And of course, we're going to be going out to Vegas for fight week. So I believe Wade gets there on Tuesday. I'll get there Wednesday after UFC tonight. I'm anchoring the weigh-in show and all the coverage for the TUF finale. I'm also doing the 194 weigh-in, so it's going to be a great week. Hope you can tune in. Thanks for joining us here on Fan Feedback. See you next time.